I've been watching college football for a long time, following it for a long time, and I cannot ever remember in my life a time when a team is coming off of a 4-8 season and they are as hyped as the 2019 Nebraska Cornhuskers. Is this hype worth it? I mean, is it for real? Are they going to be for real this year? We're going to talk about it. We're going to take a look at their offense. We're going to take a look at their defense. We're going to take a look at their coaching, and we're going to take a look at their schedule. And we're going to try to figure out today on Carolina Jackpot if this hype is really worth it. What's going on, guys? I hope you're enjoying these college football videos as much as I'm enjoying making them for you. Do me a favor, if you don't mind, at the end of the video, if you liked what I had to say, hit it with a thumbs up, please, and leave a comment if you'd like to do so. And more importantly than that, share the video. If you happen to be a Nebraska fan and you liked what I had to say here today, make sure you share it on your Nebraska football Facebook group or wherever, that we could get some more views for the stuff. Been doing these things all summer long. We've gotten quite a good response on most of them. Some of the videos have lagged a little bit in views, so I'm adding them all to a playlist, and that will be shareable as well, so that you can go back and look at all the Carolina Jackpot videos on the teams I've done so far. Got a lot more left to do as well. I did a video last week where I got some suggestions on teams to do. I'm going to take care of all those sometime here before football season gets started. I really like making these things for you guys, and I like looking up and reading about these teams and finding out about them too, because it helps me when I'm watching games. It helps me with my picks on down the road, and it's just good to get knowledgeable about other teams. So Nebraska was 4-8 in 2018. They were 5-5-2 against the spread. Now, most of your money on Nebraska, if you bet on them, would be made the second half of the season. And they were started off 0-6, finished up 4-2, and they were making a little bit of money for the guys and gals that bet on them down the stretch there. I think 5-1 against the spread down the stretch after starting off just terribly. So I think they were a little bit undervalued towards the end of the year based on how they started off. Even with that 4-8 record last year, Nebraska's fan support was through the roof. Their stadium in Lincoln, they were up to 104% capacity. Yeah, 104% capacity. While the rest of college football is struggling to get their stadiums filled up, some of these teams are 40, 50% capacity. Nebraska was 104% capacity last year. I mean, they were selling out games against Bethune-Cookman and Troy. That's really impressive. Scott Frost, in his second year at Nebraska, he has a record overall of 23-15 as a head coach. Of course, we all know that he had a great record at UCF down there in 2017. And, I think a lot of folks are banking on this team being a lot better this year just based off the fact that, he took over a terrible UCF team because they were terrible the year before he got there. In 2015, this team at UCF was winless. He took them to, I believe, a 7-6 or 6-7 record in 2016, and then in his second year, the undefeated season and that big bowl win there. So, a lot of expectations, a lot of stuff riding on that one. I was reading some stuff about Scott Frost I did not realize about him. Number one, I didn't know that he played 2 years at Stanford. Yeah, 93 and 94, he was a quarterback at Stanford. 1995, he sat out as he was a transfer, because back then, I think they made everybody sit out a year like they were supposed to. They don't do that anymore. And then, of course, in 96 and 97 is when he really blossomed under Todd Osborne, culminating in a national championship in 1997 with Nebraska over the Tennessee Vols. So everybody's pulling for Scott Frost there, and everybody is really high on this guy. Last year, number 25 offense in the country, which is not bad, but the defense, number 95, and that was really bad, okay? And I watched some highlights in Nebraska from last year. On YouTube, you can go back and watch some little clips of certain games that are like 5-10 minutes long. I watched one against Iowa, I believe it was, in Illinois. And the Illinois game in particular, which was about the middle way of the season, I really noticed that they're really getting gashed bad up the middle. Looked like their defensive tackles and their linebackers were just getting kind of obliterated there by the Illinois offensive line. So, some work to be done there. Their quarterback, Adrian Martinez, big things expected from him this year because he did some big things last year as a true freshman. Of course, the true sophomore this year. Last year, 17 touchdown passes, 8 interceptions, 2,600 yards, and a 65% completion percentage. Some really good stats for a true freshman. He's actually picked to the third team, all Big Ten team as quarterback in one magazine that I've read. Coincidentally, Justin Fields is picked as the second team quarterback. I mean, that makes no sense to me. The kind of stuff triggers me. Justin Fields hasn't done anything. He hasn't done anything on the field yet, except screw up a fake punt. I mean, but no, we're going to put him at number 2. Okay. And then some other publications had Martinez listed as number 2. Of course, the number 1 quarterback preseason in the Big Ten is Shea Patterson from the University of Michigan for a good reason. I looked and see if Martinez was in relation to Taylor Martinez, who was the quarterback there, I believe, a few years ago when South Carolina beat them in a bowl game, but I could not find any relation between these two gentlemen. Martinez also rushed for 629 yards and 8 touchdowns, which I also noticed his speed and elusiveness in the game against Illinois. He was the second leading rusher on the team. Your leading rusher's gone. You're going to have to replace him, running back. And they figured to replace with Maurice Washington, who had 455 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. But he's gotten in some off-the-field problems this year, and it's kind of up in the air where he's going to even be able to play this year at all. So Dedrick Mills is probably going to get the nod as your starting running back. He is a junior college transfer. At wide receiver, you're in decent shape with your starters. J.D. Spellman, 66 catches last year for 818 yards. And Cade Warner, former walk-on, he is the son of Kurt Warner, former St. Louis Rams quarterback. But other than those two guys, you don't have a lot of depth there. Your offensive line improved throughout the year, as did the rest of your team and your record. You got some youth at your center position and the 2 guards. Your tackles are pretty solid, and you're returning your starting tight end. Brendan James, one of the offensive tackles, is actually picked the third team all Big Ten selection as well. Depth is kind of an issue on your line of scrimmage, and it's also an issue at your wide receiver positions. After Spellman and Warner, you don't really have a lot there. Let's just go on ahead and say you got some depth issues at running back as well. Defensively, so we already talked about that defense. Got kind of gashed last year, but Scott Frost hired a new strength coach there, and his team, he claims that they're going to be a lot stronger this year, which will be a good thing because they cannot get pushed around on the line of scrimmage against some of these teams you're going to face, because some of these guys are no joke. Defensive line, you're returning 4 of your top 5 players, including defensive end Ben Steele and defensive end Khalil Davis. At the linebacker position, Mohamed Berry returns on the inside. He led your team last year with 112 tackles. Now, Luke Gifford, who led your team last year in sacks, is gone, but you're returning JoJo Domon and an injured player named Will Honus, who was out all of last year. Defensive backs, you're in decent shape there. You've got to replace your 2 safeties, but both your corners are back, led by DiCaprio Boodle. That's a great football name, isn't it? And Lamar Jackson. No, it's not that Lamar Jackson. So, the back end of your defense, I mean, you seem to be okay. At the linebacker position, I wouldn't be too worried about that. You got some starters up front. I would be a little bit concerned in the secondary, though, replacing 2 starters back there, even though you got Mr. Boodle to take care of one of those corner spots. Special teams, Barrett Pickering is your place kicker, 40 of 41 last year on extra points. That's excellent. 14 of 18 on field goals. His long was 47. And your punter is another former walk-on, Isaac Armstrong, last year, 43.8 yards per boot. That's solid. This team, like I said, they claim that they're going to be a lot stronger this year. I mean, just looking at their roster, you still got a lot of freshmen and sophomores listed as your second teamers, which, I mean, a lot of teams do. But, I mean, that could become a depth issue if you end up having some injuries down the stretch. So, speaking of down the stretch, we're going to go on ahead to Carolina Jackpot's board and take a look at the 2019 slate for you guys and try to find some win totals here, shall we? Let's go. This is our 2019 Nebraska Cornhuskers slate. Las Vegas is saying you're going to get 8.5 wins. Carolina Jackpot and the Carolina Jackpot channel family will be the judge of that. Okay, first before we get started, yeah, I did that. I free-handed that. It was not a 5-year-old girl that did it as an art project. I know it looks kind of funky, so just whatever. Don't judge me. I'm not an artist. All right, South Alabama at home on the 31st of August. Of course, we're going to chalk that one up as a sure win. This team was 3-9 last year and has lost a bunch of starters. So you get the win there. Second game of the year, you're on the road at Colorado. Okay, I'm going to give you a win in this game. This is going to go a long way towards judging or gauging your improvement over last year. You lost to these guys at home last year, 33-28, I believe it was, in your opener. Don't expect a whole lot from Colorado this year. They hired Georgia's former defensive coordinator, Mel Tucker, as head coach. I don't know. I don't know what the relationship is there. To me, that's kind of a head-scratching hire. But at any rate, I don't expect them to be real good. Their quarterback, Steven Montez, is a pretty good player. But other than that, yeah, they just don't have a lot. And I don't see this place being some type of intimidating spot to play in. All right, Colorado, you get the win there. Next week, you come home against NIU, the Huskies. I'm going to give you guys a win here, but be careful. This team won the MAC championship last year, beat a really good Buffalo team in that game. They have a lot of returnees, but they did have the number 95 pass defense last year in the country, so Martinez should light this team up. They were terrible offensively. They just win ugly games. So you get the win there against the NIU Huskies. This is another one that's got to judge your improvement here. You lost to them at home in 2017. This is before Scott Frost was there. It was during the Mike Riley era, but 21-17 at home lost to Northern Illinois 2 years ago. Get a measure of revenge. Next week, you're taking on another Illinois school, the University of Illinois, on the road. And I'm going to give you a win here as well. You've won 4 of the last 5 against these guys. You've covered the spread 4 of the last 5 against them. It's not all impressed with Illinois at this point in time. The next week, at home against Ohio State. This will be your toughest game of the year, probably your toughest opponent. At any rate, probably the highest ranked opponent that you will face all year long. You're 1-6 versus Ohio State. And my thing about them when I was looking at them, yeah, it's Ohio State. We all know, it's an elite program. They only have 4 starters returning on that offense. They've got 9 starters returning on the defense that was the 86th best in the country last year. I mean, it's just not good. They lose a lot off that offense. Justin Fields, this is going to be his first real test in a hostile environment, and it will be a hostile environment. I expect, close to 90,000 fans in Memorial Stadium in Lincoln for this game. This will be your biggest game there in years. Who knows how Justin Fields is going to handle that hostile crowd. I mean, it didn't look too good last year in the limited action that he saw in the Mercedes-Benz Dome against Alabama. At that little fake punt, little poor execution there. I'm going to give y'all a win here. I think you beat Ohio State. I think you beat them. We'll put a watch on it because I'm not 100% sold on that. But Ohio State, I mean, you almost beat these guys last year in Columbus. And, I mean, I just think it's time, you know, if you're going to make a move, here's your time to do it. I give you a win against the Ohio State Buckeyes, but I'm going to put a watch on that one. The next week, though, here we go. What goes up must go down, right? Northwestern at home. I'm going to give you your first loss against these guys. And the reason why, this is just a tough team. It's a really tough team. Pat Fitzgerald has his team prepared every year. Every year they're always prepared. They're always an 8-9 win team when you never think they're going to be. They had a bad pass defense last year, but you know they kind of have a bend but don't break type philosophy there, and that's the way they play. They're bringing in a new quarterback, Hunter Johnson, who was actually like a #1 rated quarterback, I think, in the class of 2016. Spent a couple of years at Clemson. He played very, very sparingly in that 2017 season, and then he transferred to Northwestern when, you know, he saw that he wasn't going to get any reputable playing time behind Trevor Lawrence, and he's good. I mean, he really is good from what I've seen in limited action. I mean, you know, given my bias against Clemson and their play, I mean, let's just throw that out the window. This kid is talented, and I just have a feeling that you're going to beat Ohio State, or either if you don't beat them, it's going to be a really close game, maybe a close loss, and then the next week I think you're going to have, you know, the obligatory letdown against Northwestern. I'll put a watch on it, though, because I'm not 100% sold on that one, but that's just the way I see that one. Next week, you're on the road at Minnesota. I'm going to give you a loss against these guys, too. I'm really high on Minnesota this year. They are really, really good at the skill positions. Got a ton of returning starters. PJ Fleck has got that team clicking on all cylinders. I mean, you guys are just kind of mirroring each other. You know, both teams really, really on the upswing over there in that Big Ten Western side. I just think that they get this one from you, being that it's on the road at Minnesota. Last year, y'all took care of business against them at home. That was actually where you stopped your losing streak, and you beat them in pretty easy fashion. But they improved a lot, too, after that game. So I'm going to give Minnesota the win here on the road. Indiana, the next week, is a home game for you. Look for you to get the win here. Indiana's a team that normally plays good teams, really tough, but they just always seem to come up short. You know, then they're always hovering around that 4-8, 5-7 mark. You know, just nothing special. I don't expect anything special from them this year. They'll probably give you a tough game. I mean, they normally do with good teams, but I expect you to take the win here. The next week, you are on the road at Purdue. This one's an easy one for me. I'm giving you a win. I watched Purdue, some highlights of them when I was doing my Auburn video, and I was just not impressed at all with their physicality. I mean, because there was none. There was none. When they were playing Auburn, I mean, and I had actually picked Purdue to cover in that bowl game against Purdue. I mean, or against Auburn. And, man, I was wrong. I admit that I was dead wrong on that one. I mean, they got pushed around. I mean, it looked like the JV versus the varsity. I mean, it was just terrible. They lost that quarterback, Blau, who, you know, was really what made their offense go last year. Yes, they do return Rondell Moore at wide receiver, but the quarterback that they're returning is kind of a guy that got beat out for that job, Elijah Sindelar. He was starting there in 2017. Then Blau took over the job. They've only got 4 starters returning on offense. You know, their defense was 113th nationally, and if you'd watched that game against Auburn, you could tell why. And this is where the strength of Nebraska and how much they've improved is going to show here. You get to win on the road against Purdue. Next week, you return home against Wisconsin. This is going to be another tough game for you. Going to be another big crowd in Lincoln for this one. They are only returning 3 starters off of a 8-5 team's offense. Now, they got Jonathan Taylor. I mean, they have Jonathan Taylor coming back, and they have to replace almost their entire offensive line. But Wisconsin is known for producing offensive line talent. So really not that worried about that. But I mean, last year you guys played, I mean, and you kept it fairly close for a while on the road, and then they kind of pulled away from you there at the end. This has got to be another case here of I just believe that you guys are going to be stronger. I believe you're going to be stronger up front than you were, and I'm going to give you a win in this game. I'm going to put a watch on it, though. I'm not totally convinced of that. You know, if this offensive line gels real quick, I mean, they go through the season, I mean, and don't show a lot of ill effects from losing everybody from last year, and Jonathan Taylor is running at a torrid pace, and your defensive line, doesn't live up to billing, and still getting pushed around, you take the loss here. But I'm going to give you a win against Nebraska there. On the road on the 23rd against Maryland. Now, you've had a little string of games here, about a 4-game stretch here. This will be without a game off. Maryland, I feel like at this point in the season, is going to be fighting for a bowl. I feel like that they are going to be headed in the right direction with Mike Locksley as their coach. That quarterback that they've got, Josh Jackson, who will be their starter that transferred in from Virginia Tech. I feel like Locksley is going to let him loose and, air the ball out a little bit more than what he did at Virginia Tech. I think that this team is going to surprise a few people. This is going to be a really big game for them at home, and I think that you're going to take the loss here. I think they're going to upset you in College Park. Put a watch on it, but I think that you take the loss there to Nebraska. And then the last game of the season at home, you're taking on Iowa. They face a really tough schedule. They got Penn State and Michigan from the eastern side of the Big Ten, as well as you guys. This is going to be a really, really big game for you on Black Friday. You barely lost to them last year on the road, and I'm going to pick you guys here to take the win against the Iowa Hawkeyes. Really, really big game for you there. A big win I think you're going to take at home against Iowa. One that bears watching, though, however, not 100% totally sold on you beating them, but that's what I'm coming up with. So that would leave you with 1, 2, 3 losses, according to what I have here, and 9-3 record. That's hard for me to do at this time. I'm just not looking at some of these teams. I mean, there are just a lot of them that have lost a lot of talent. They've lost a lot of, not necessarily skill talent, but with the Wisconsins and the Iowas, they're just replacing a ton of players. So I don't really know, how that's going to turn out. Like none of us do. Are those guys going to really be able to gel? Are they not going to miss a beat? Are they going to be better than the ones that they're replacing or not? Looking at this, I'm going to give you an 8-4 record. I mean, we've come up with 9 wins, but I think there's going to be a loss that slips in somewhere there. Maybe you don't win that game against Ohio State. I mean, it's going to be a tough one. I mean, I'm putting my good faith on you to win this game, but it could flip-flop either way. I don't see you losing to Indiana or Purdue at all. I mean, the Maryland game could flip back to a win for you there as well. Even the road game at Colorado that's not a given. I mean, this team started out 6-0 last year. I mean, I'm not very high on them this year, but I mean, anything is possible. I don't think you're going to lose to South Alabama or NIU, but I think that a slip up here somewhere is possible. Losing to Iowa also is certainly possible as well. So Vegas is going to say 8.5 wins. I'm going to give you 8. I think you're capable of winning 9, but if I were smart, I would take the under on this team. I don't think you're quite there yet. I just don't think you're quite there yet in terms of depth. That's not a knock on Nebraska. I mean, Lord knows my South Carolina Gamecocks have faced the same situation. You know, a very talented, first team, but once you get past that, we don't have a lot there. And that's kind of what I'm seeing with this team as well. That's Carolina Jackpot's prediction. 8-4 regular season for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Honestly, I think you could finish up anywhere between 7-5 and 9-3. If you really, really, really overachieve, you could possibly go 10-2. I don't see you going any worse than 7-5. I think you're definitely going to have a winning record this year and make a bowl game. But unfortunately, I don't see you winning more than 8 games. 9, I think, would be a huge success. Do I think that you can win that side of the Big Ten? I don't know. I'm banking on you beating Ohio State, but dropping a game to Northwestern and one of these other teams over on that side of the division. So my gut tells me no. My gut tells me that you're probably going to finish in second place and just miss out on the Big Ten Western Division Championship. I think that's probably either going to be won by Iowa or Minnesota. But it all remains to be seen. The depth is the biggest issue I see. That's taking nothing away from Nebraska. I think Scott Frost is a great coach, and I think that you guys have got a real winner lined up there. I just think it's going to take a little bit longer. It's some more depth along the lines of scrimmage. Not having a real feel as to who your running back is going to be is kind of a concern, and then not having anybody else that can really step in past those other 2 receivers is concerning as well. But I know he's recruited well, so maybe there's some really young guys that will step up this year and fill some of those gaps. But 8-4 is really a successful season when you look back and see that you went 4-8 last year. You've basically flipped the field. That's my take on Nebraska for the 2019 season. Once again, if you enjoyed this video, please hit it with a like. Please share it, and please leave a comment in the comment section below. And please make sure you join us next time on the Carolina Jackpot channel for our prediction on, I don't know who we're going to do yet, but we'll have one. I'll see y'all later. Peace, and I'm out. Go Gamecocks. Spurs up to my toes up, baby. Woo!